everybody, it's Wednesday and it's showtime. And today it's Benevo Bites and we've got some really fascinating conversation for you. This is the world's first mobility tech show. And what we're going to be talking about today is the future of tech in global mobility. Now, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it very much from an operational point of view. But today we're going to talk about it from a strategic point of view. How can we use technology to make global mobility more strategic? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it's going to be a fascinating show. I'm delighted that we've got Eric Halverson and Wes Okumura as our special guests. They're both on the Strategy Council at Benevo, but are hugely well known as titans of our industry. And it's great to have them on the show with us today. So that's going to be a great show. Now, if you're out there in LinkedIn world, I think you know how it works. Let us know, join the conversation, write in the comments box. We want to hear what you've got to say. So let us know what your views are. Say hi, give us your shout outs, tell us where you are in the world, what's going on. Nicola, it's just great to see you today, and everyone's coming in. I see more and more people coming to our studio, which is great. So let me tell you a little bit about, hey there, Emily from France. Great to see you, Emily. So let me tell you a bit about what we've got lined up for you in future weeks. As I said, today we're doing our little fireside chat on technology. And then next week, we've got a fascinating show for you on The View from the Top. And it's a subject that we haven't done before. We've got a session on The View from the Top meets the women of global mobility. And the women that we've got, obviously there are a lot of women in global mobility, but the women who are going to be with us on the show next week, I'm absolutely delighted. We've got 4 real stars of the industry joining us. We've got Rena Montalvo from News Corp. We've got Deb Convery, formerly of Nike, who's in fact just joined Peloton just a week or so ago. So congratulations to Deb on her new role. And we've got Becky Woods from ADP. And then joining me in moderating that session, I'm delighted to say Galia Peretz from Wycott will be joining us. So we've got a really great show next week, and that should be absolutely fabulous. And then the following week, the 12th of May, we're back with Benevo Bites, and we're going to be a bit futuristic on the 12th of May. We're going to be gazing into that crystal ball, maybe it's a silicon ball, talking about both the near future of technology and the slightly longer term future of technology and what that could mean for us in global mobility. But first of all, of course, we do have our very own move. We do have a situation where we at Benevo, we are delighted that we're opening a Silicon Valley office in Palo Alto, and we are moving our very own Matt Cheek from Valencia to Palo Alto. And in true Benevo form, we are crowdsourcing his move, and we've gone all a bit Kardashian on it. We've gone a bit Kardashian, and so we're going to get everybody to help us talk about Matt and Matt's move, and we're going to be showing you some really cool technology that we're using on Matt's move. So without further ado, let me bring Matt on and start talking about Matt's move and how we crowdsource mobility. Matt, how are you doing? How's it going?
Doing great. Doing really good. Always with more suspense after watching that video.
So, I mean, you must be getting, really pretty excited. It's when are you going? When's flight day?
Flight day is on Sunday night.
Okay, so
yes.
And I understand your family is staying back in Valencia for a couple
Yes,
of
I'm
months.
going on a solo initial outing. My son is going to finish up his school year, and so I'm going to go for 2 months and get us all sorted out. Then come back, collect everybody, and go back in the summer.
Cool. Well, that's amazing. So, you know, your bags are packed, everything's organized, the apartment's sorted. You're all 100%. It's easy. I don't
Nothing
know.
will be left. Nothing will be down to the wire.
So you're all sorted. Now, tell me, Matt. I mean, obviously, when we help clients, we use the Benevo technology for a particular client, whichever client it is, and they have the personalized experience. But this is the first time, obviously, we've done it on ourselves. So tell me what it's like. I mean, they always talk about the cobbler and his shoes. What's it like using our own technology on ourselves? And perhaps you can show people a real life example of what it's like.
Let me give a quick flavor. So we built Benevo for Benevo. So usually we're doing Benevo for the name of your company. In this case, the name of the company is us. And so let me give you a sneak peek of what I've been using to manage my move. So here we go, is what a Benevo for Benevo looks like. And as you can see, one of the things that we do with the product is that we make the product that you're using to manage your move look like your company. So here is, you know, our branding, our website, our company, and the Benevo for Benevo product also looks the same. So I'm not doing very badly. I've got 62% done of the things that I need to do. So I've got nothing late. I'm perfectly.
You got about 4 days left to do the rest.
Well, some of it is, you know, over the course of settling in. So I'm pretty on track, right? So I have, open up a bank account coming up next, getting my phone sorted out, and you can take a peek at some of the things that I have done. So it's already been busy. So I've chosen my gift experience. I'm looking forward to being able to read. It's a cool app for reading cliff notes and summaries of books. Cool idea from the team. I've chosen a charity to support, and that's happening over in our community experience. So the way that this works on Benevo is that as you share insights about your move, insights about the new destination, and you know, some of the decisions that you made in the process. So that's really going to start happening for me, basically, you know, right now. If you share enough insights back into the platform, in this case 30, then we double the donation to the cause that you wanted to support. So I've decided to support the 1 day of medical support. That was an option in the options for charitable causes. And then as I go along, learn more things about moving back to the Bay Area and share insights with the rest of the Benevo team to come behind me, and other movers using the Benevo platform. I will be adding up these insights and having a bit of fun, both helping my colleagues and helping support the charitable cause that I selected.
And let me come in on that, because I think personally, it's one of the really cool things that we've done. And it's all about, you know, giving back and social responsibility, is that we've gamified global mobility so that, you know, in this case it's you, but in other cases it's, you know, the clients who are assignees are incented, are gamified to put in information, and that by doing that, it's points means prizes, that they gain points, and then the prize they get is the donation that we make on their behalf to a charity that they or their organization can select.
That's right. And we're doing that both. And so I wanted to show another example of some of the, you know, what client branded platforms are looking like, just to kind of illustrate the uniqueness of each experience. And also in terms of the charitable giving within each one of these communities, we do fun things of doing the aggregate reporting at the end of the year to show what impact each community is making. And we can also do, you know, really impressive aggregate reporting of the Benevo user group as a whole. So that's, yeah, it's a really nice part. It's also feels good. It especially feels good after to give as well as get. I'm getting a gift. I'm getting relocation support, going on an adventure, and it's nice to tie that back to an act of giving myself. So here's the other things that I've been up to. I did fill out some insights about the town I'm moving from. I learned about the qualification, the relocation allowances that I'm eligible for, and that was something that Benevo required me to do. That's what that little star is there. And I've learned all about COVID. I'm preparing to quarantine for 7 days. I've given all the basic details to the company about my flight details, my passports, and more. So where I'm going to be getting into is a lot more on the destination. So I've got temp accommodation already sorted out, and then I need to find long-term accommodation. So the housing module is going to become a major focus for me over the next couple of weeks. And my settling in actions, I'm really going to be spending some time on family life and parent resources. And I've already jumped right into to the pay later to book some of that temp accommodation. So I've requested we did the standard amount. I've requested that. I've got my repayment schedule set up here.
And let me just come in on that for people who don't know. Pay later is a fintech solution that Benevo offers its clients, where effectively we offer what is an interest-free advance of money to anybody who's relocating, which is directly not from the employer, but directly from Benevo. I appreciate in this case it is the employer, but normally it's not. It's from Benevo, not the employer, to the individual, and then they repay it over a period of 6 months. Interest-free.
That's right, and here it is here. So I'm starting my U.S. payroll in May. So the repayments start in June and go for 6 months after that. I can also pay in advance if I want to. I can even choose to repay in full if I want to. So a couple quick buttons there. So it's going great, and looking forward to checking in again soon.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that, Matt. That's really, really helpful, interesting stuff. What I want to do is bring onto the show now. I think it's time. We've talked about Matt the Kardashian, as I've been nicknaming you, or our door-to-door Matt's experience. But I now want to move on to our immigration update. And today's immigration update is actually a pretty somber one, because we're going to be talking about what's going on with COVID and coronavirus in India. So a hugely topical and, dare I say it, a difficult subject, but I think it's a very important subject. So we're going to say goodbye to you now, Matt, and I'm going to bring on Julia Onslow-Cole to join me to talk about immigration. Julia, hello.
Hi.
How are you doing today? I see the love is coming up. I can see this, and thank you to our audience. We really appreciate it. It makes us feel good. It certainly makes you feel. We all feel good. So please do send in the applauses and the likes and the hearts. But Julia, we're talking about a very difficult subject today. I did think it was important that we cover it, and I know a lot of our viewers are from the Indian subcontinent. So if people could also feed in their experiences, and we'll try and put those on screen as well. So those of you who are on the ground in India, tell us what it's like and what you're hearing where you are. But Julia, tell us what you've been hearing and what's the latest in India at the moment.
Thanks, Brian. And I just wanted to start by saying how really sorry I am about the situation in India. And I'm really mindful that so many of our dear friends from India regularly contribute to the show. And also I know that many of them are actually here today. So I just wanted to say, to Bindu, Prime Vada, Lisa, Shraddha, who I've just seen all join. We're very mindful of what a difficult situation it is now. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to the Fragaman team in India, Manal, Sebin, Saju, and Archana Mittal, who's also joined today. And they've been absolutely amazing. They've been so busy, and they've spoken to me every single morning for the last 7 days, including Archana Mittal. So thank you so much to them. So the situation in India is really quite bad, and I think that it's particularly bad in the north around New Delhi. So speaking to people over the last week, there does seem to be a bit of a divergence between the north and the south, but there has been across India a dramatic surge in COVID cases, and they've really hit global highs for the past few consecutive days, and hospitals have really run out of beds and they're overrun. And we've seen that even in the UK. It's not really hard to get beds to overrun because most hospitals don't have that many intensive care beds. So on Monday, there were 350,000 reported cases. And of those, I don't know if those numbers were a little bit underreported as well, but that's the single largest number of cases reported for a country in one day ever pandemic. And investigations are ongoing as to, why it's so bad, this second wave. And, there were a number of religious festivals where millions of people attended, and there were 5 or 6 states that had their state election campaigns where there were mass rallies. And these ongoing investigations about the variants. So what is happening with regards to travel? And I think the first thing to say is that the lockdowns are not national. So they vary from state to state. Countries like Delhi are on a full lockdown. Other states have curfews for the weekend or night. So they vary state to state. And on a more positive note, the central government has accelerated plans to set up 551 oxygen generation plants. And there's a lot of overseas help and a lot of fantastic help from Indian and foreign-based companies in India who are really all rallying together to try and control infection rates. And from the end of this week, there is going to be a vaccination campaign for everyone over 18. Now, at the current time, right at today, and I spoke to Archana literally about an hour ago, India is open to eligible overseas nationals, so foreign nationals with permission to work, not tourists. But the current suspension of all commercial flights up to the 30th of April, means that this is actually very difficult to go to India. And we are waiting in the next few hours for an update from the Indian Director General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA. And it's very likely that they're going to continue this suspension on scheduled international commercial airline services. But we know in the previous situation, we know that there was a complete border shutdown. So, that hasn't been ruled out either. Now, you recall that last year, after this complete border shutdown, and we had a lot of Indian citizens who were unfortunately trapped overseas, desperate to get back to India, there was what was called VBM set up. It's the Vande Bharat mission. And that was launched on May the 6th last year. And it was an evacuation program to help stranded Indian citizens who wanted to go back to India. And then it was extended to foreign nationals who wanted to get to India. And it's run by Indian Airways. And this VBM has now been set up again or continued for people in this situation. So that's how they're traveling back to India. There's 27 bilateral arrangements between India and other countries with the air bubble arrangements. But of those 27, 12 have been put on a sort of hold or restriction. And you'll recall that last week we talked about the fact that the UK had put India on the red list, which was from 4 a.m. last Friday. And that means that only British citizen holders or permanent residents or those with work rights can actually go to the UK, and they have to quarantine in a government hotel or government-run program for 10 days. So all Indian carriers have suspended their scheduled flights to countries which have imposed entry bans on Indian citizens.
Which in turn really means there's very few flights back because the planes
are very difficult to get flights. So there's the India consular visa services have not been suspended. So for those people that you need to go to India to actually need to process applications, They're still operating across the globe, but in some countries, for example, Munich, where there's a lockdown, there's restrictions on the India consular services. But a very big practical note is that we'd strongly advise any global mobility leader who's actually wanting in the future to get people to India to actually carry on with the process and try and get them travel ready, because we think there will be a surge in applications as soon as the situation is under control, and it will be quite difficult then. There'll be a huge backlog. So you should carry on with the process. And there's a significant volume of hiring going on in India. Just figures this week, the top 4 Indian IT companies are looking for 100,000 new jobs. So there is a lot of movement, and therefore, if you're in the middle of making some hires into India, you should get on with them, even though it's obviously quite difficult at the embassies. Now,
there's one thing we know from all the other countries, and I suppose Italy was the first country I can think of that really had an uncontrolled explosion of it, is that countries do get through it.
Yes.
But even, however dark it is now, we know that it's something that we will get through.
Yes, and as I said, there has been an amazing amount of pulling together from companies that are there, overseas aid and Indian governments. So the other thing to talk about very quickly is Indian outbound consular services. So the embassies are suffering. The US diplomatic post in India, they've actually got 100 people on their staff who have COVID in India at the moment. Wow. So there's reduced services and there are only emergency appointments. The last 2 points I want to make is about Indian citizens who were unsuccessful in the H-1B lottery. They might not wish to go back to India when their OPT status expires, and employers may be looking to park them in Canada or the UK, or they may be thinking perhaps converting them to visitor status in the US while it's unsafe to travel. And I spoke to Charlotte Slocum, who's our head of consular practices, US consular practices for Europe. And she said, if you file that application in a timely manner, it will give those individuals time to sort out their affairs. She said probably it would be actually the application will be refused, but it would be, quite a good ploy if you're just wanting to keep someone in the US. And the last point, a small point, is that H-1B visa holders from India cannot transit through Schengen countries to get to the US. Back to the US. You need to go on a direct flight.
Okay, Julia, thank you so much for that really important, somber, but as I said, hugely important update. And we will see you again, at the end of the show and again, of course, next week. But thank you once again. And thank you also to all your friends and colleagues in Fragment who've helped you collate the information that you share with us this week and each week. And just picking up here on a comment from Archana as we move on, she says, it's important for people in India to act responsibly and do their part in combating the virus and not raise panic. Stay cautious, positive, and mentally strong. And from everybody from Benivo, on Benivo Bites, and from all the audience, we wish all the best to all our friends and colleagues in India at this difficult time. So thank you, Julia. And we're now going to move on to talk about technology. And again, in true Benivo Bites form, please do put your virtual hands together and applaud as I bring onto the stage our special guests for this technology session, Wes Okumura and Eric Halverson, who both sit on the Benivo Strategy Council, titans of the industry from the Bay Area, and of course, our very own CEO, Nitsan Udan. Hi guys. Hi. How are you all?
Hey. Good morning.
Good.
Good evening.
Great. Hello, everyone.
It's early for you guys. Okay, so after that session we talked with Matt, and we've been talking about India. I want to move the conversation on now to talk about technology, and in particular technology and strategy. So let's just talk about how we can use technology to make mobility much more strategic. And let me start, and I'll start with you, Eric, on this. I mean, you know, we're talking about the pandemic, and obviously we've been talking about that a lot in the last year or so. We've been talking about it. I should try. I'm getting a bit of background noise. I don't know if somebody's got a second device open or something. But if you're not speaking, you go on mute. We're just getting a bit of background noise there. Can I ask, Eric, how has the pandemic taught us about tech, or what rather has the pandemic taught us about tech, and how do you think we can use the learnings that we've had during the pandemic to make mobility just that bit more strategic?
Wow. Wow. Well, I think
I'll start with the easy one, Eric.
Well, I think what it's shown us is we depend on the technology more and more. It's become more and more important for a variety of reasons. One is because we don't know who's going to be around necessarily. If you're not dependent on technology, then you're dependent on people, and people are transient. They might be there, they might not. The organization might be there, might not. So how do we maintain the data we need, the history we need, the continuity we need in uncertain times? And technology seems to be the answer towards that. With the pandemic, I mean, the key has been, how do you adapt? How do you adapt to the unknown? How do you adapt to what you've never had to confront before? How do you keep things rolling, the balls in the air? And so there has to be some place of consistency, some place of reliability, some place of dependability. And that seems to be in the technology. And so I think there's a greater reliance on technology just to maintain, your dependability within your organization. Where is it?
I think there's a whole issue around, which I think you were touching on, about corporate memory. That when you've got the same people coming in day after day to the office, and they can have conversations, if they forget something, they'll just go and ask the other person, whatever it is they need to know.
Yeah.
But you lose all that when you've got people either working remotely or indeed people on furlough or no longer with the organization. So we need to use technology in some way to be I was going to say the corporate brain. Maybe it's even the corporate spine.
Well, look at the prime example of the pandemic was what we went from being able to just lean over and talk to our friend, in the cubicle next to us, or do something briefly, and suddenly Zoom popped out of nowhere. Suddenly Teams popped out of nowhere. The technology filled in the vacuum of being able to interact, and now it's become second nature to us to jump on a video call. We had video capability before, but the pandemic exploded that, right? So now you've got grandmas on Zoom. You've got people that have never used the technology before, never thought they would need the technology. And it's become the lifeblood of being able to communicate with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wes, from your perspective, I mean, obviously, you've worked with EY for many years and with many clients. Have you seen major shifts in terms of how people have started to use technology to make mobility much more strategic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this shift started happening before the pandemic, but as we talked about in, I think, the last session, the pandemic has really highlighted the need, as Eric mentioned, to have better technology and really better access to data, and really start looking at the whole mobility function as an entire mobility ecosystem, thinking about immigration, tax, relocation management, payroll, employment tax, et cetera, and how you access the data. So I think a couple key themes that have come out of this is the importance of having data, both for oversight and management purposes, and then also to enable the mobility function to have that data to use it in a more strategic way and provide more insights to the business. But some of the keys that I think that have kind of come to fruition is, number one, having the ability to have access to data from multiple sources, from different vendors, from different providers, from different platforms, is become a priority for many companies. And two, to have confidence that the data is accurate. And then I think a third element is making sure that you can rationalize the data. So you may have similar terminology of an item, for example, like a home rental or an apartment flat or a rental cost or a lease agreement that may be in different systems, but to be able to rationalize that data, to have that single source of truth, so to speak, and to be able to use that data from the multiple sources in a consistent way. And so I think that's some of the key things that a lot of companies are starting to really focus on. And leveraging technology obviously is the key to integrate that data and be able to provide that sort of insight perspective.
Okay, so you're talking about using technology to integrate a mobility ecosystem. And it's not just a question of integrating, it's managing the system as well. So I mean, you've got the two things. You want to manage it, and you also want to pull it all together across multiple vendors. I mean, in your experience, Eric, I mean, how many vendors would a typical company be dealing with down its supply chain?
Well, depends how many directly. They probably usually at a minimum they're working with three direct. You know, the three big components is the relocation component, the tax component, and the immigration component. So that at a minimum, and then they may be going, you know, direct to some vendors. They may be working directly with movers. They may be moving, you know, directly with, you know, temp housing providers. Depends what the relationship is. But certainly at a minimum, they're trying to coordinate those three big aspects, you know, the relocation, the tax, and the immigration. And it can be frustrating. Like, you know, what Wes said was really important is the accuracy. It can be really frustrating when the data that you're getting on an individual isn't accurate within those three systems, for example. Or if you're in a crunch and you have a very time urgent need and you've got to somehow, you know, go out to three different vendors, three different suppliers to try to get the whole picture on an individual. And of course, you know, there's different response rates. There's different, you know, so I know that was that was one of the things that we were trying to work towards, was trying to see, you know, is it possible to have like one management system where you can get all the data together at one time to give you what you needed. Because like I say, when the C-level guys, when the CFO, you know, when the CEO has a question, they don't really understand that gathering information takes time. They pretty much expect you to have it right now.
Absolutely. So Nitzan, I mean, I'll pass the talking stick to you here, because I know that you've got a lot to say on how, I mean, you're the technologist, you know, amongst us. You know, we all like talk technology, but you're the guy that actually runs the technology company and knows that, you know, knows how to code. So, you know, it's beyond my pay grade. So tell me, Nitzan, what can we do? And maybe you can show us something to actually use technology to manage and integrate that ecosystem, and where can that take us?
Yeah, I'll show a few examples on that. I think if I'm taking some of the points that Eric and Wes shared, I think all of us showed since just a few 12 months ago, the importance of agility and the quality of the data across vendors, because just 12 months ago, every mobility manager we talked with, and I'm sure everyone experienced here, was busy just to find out one question: where are my employees? Right? Because we didn't know what's going on, who is where, who is actually exposed, what's the status, and just trying to get that information from the different sources. We identify that as kind of a tipping point in the market, and the trend that we are seeing that is very, very clear is that more and more corporates are saying, okay, I've learned my lesson, now I want to own the data. I want the data to be on a few clicks that I can click, and I'm not dependent on anyone else who need to provide me that. And that's something that we've seen a lot happening in conversation and as a strong trend of how can I make sure that, exactly as Ike said, when my C-level asks me a question, I'm in control of the answer. I'm not dependent on anyone else. Let's try to bring that into an example of how we can manage all the information that's coming from different vendors. I'll share my screen and show a few things from the Benivo platforms where we build exactly on the base of that feedback. So 12 months ago, when we first got the feedback, the first thing we did is in 3 days, we launched a feature that allows to show where are my employees. That was just one thing. But what we've done since is invest a lot in what we call the management platform. This is the tool for the mobility team, for the HR team, as well as other stakeholders in the business, in order to be able to manage their program better. And at the moment, we are looking at one employee, Susan Banner, and we will see all the key information. Where is she now? What stage is she in her mobility journey? Any notes I wrote about her, as well as a snapshot of across the key vendor, what's the status of delivery? What has been delivered to her between the key things that are relevant for them. And then I can drill down either to my document repository or, as we were looking at the vendors, to see information, specific information about each of the vendor services that are delivering now services for Susan. And I, as the mobility manager, I can tell where she is at the step, how many days she's been in the process, what's the next step. And on top of that, all that information.
Let me come in on that to cut across your Nitsa. This is not something that you have to get a report on. This is real-time data that the mobility manager can get at any point. So if the CEO walks into the office and says, I need to know about this, that, and the other, they can pull that information there and then and have a report within whatever, quick as their printer works, 10 seconds or.
Yes, and maybe not for the CEO, but if the HRBP asks for that, we also created that view that they can each see the data of their own employees. And I'll show a few examples of that, right? So they don't even need to come and ask the question, because when we talked last time, if we want to be strategic, we need to eliminate manual work, right? We need to reduce the redundant work that we do time and time again and have technology deliver that so we can do the value-add strategic work. So as you pointed out correctly, this is all live information that I can just share and have that. And now we're looking on the viewpoint from the view of one employee, right? So we can be, we know what's happening with that employee across the vendors. But the next thing we can do is we can now look and analyze a program or a population. So let's say I want to see the delivery around immigration. I can go and I can find out those same steps we saw before that are part of the service delivery for the immigration support. I can see what is the stage, what is the status, and how my vendors are delivering on their KPIs. So one of the things that on their KPIs and SLAs, right? Each of our vendors has SLAs. At the moment, the vendors are delivering on their own SLAs, which is not ideal. What we created instead is an objective system that measures what's called big data, so a lot of data points, in order to identify the SLA delivery in real time. And I can then go, and because the data is available for me, the mobility manager, I can filter by policy, by specific employee, home country, host country, business unit, or even compare between a few vendors, immigration vendors, if I have more than one, for example. And what this data gives me, and one example here is I can see the 5 or 6 steps of the immigration process, what is happening at any given time. So let's say the first step is contacting, being in contact with the employee. And I can see that on average, my vendor delivers that in 2.2 days. And that's according to the SLA of the 3 days. So that's fine. But I can also see that there are, at the moment, 5 people that are at this stage for longer than the SLA. So we don't need to wait anymore for the QBR in order to analyze performance. We can see in real time that there is here an issue with 5 employees that haven't been contacted. And even before there is an escalation by the business or by those employees, we can take action and avoid those escalations. So we save time of managing escalations and all the noise that is coming from failure of delivery after it happened, to being able to proactively, on real time, take action and change what could have become a negative outcome. And if we put, the role of a mobility manager, obviously, there are some employees that are higher priority, and we can again identify those employees that are critical for me, the VIPs of the organization, which I want the system to monitor closely, and then I get real-time alerts on anything that is happening with them. So I can make sure that the delivery of the services to these people is going according to the plan, and with the others, we are still delivering, of course, support. But it allows me to shift my focus to those that matters most.
Okay. Is there more you want to say on that part of the demo, Nitzan? Or
I think for now that will be good.
We'll move on. Yeah. Just a comment that's just come in. I just want to I'm not sure it's strictly in line with this conversation, but I'm just going to put it there. This is actually from Yuki Watanabe, who I'll just say, actually, congratulations on the new job, Yuki. I know you've moved from the Gap to, I can't remember the name of the company, but I know you're now in Germany, or about to go to Germany. So congratulations on the move. But the question that was asked is, anybody using this, and maybe I'll turn that around, Nitzat, is how can this be used for those who are on board in their home location, but who are now waiting for entry restrictions to be lifted so they can get to the host location?
So people who their relocation is on hold, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think they've been onboarded in their home location. I think that's what Yuki's saying, but they haven't managed to get to their host location because they're waiting for entry restrictions to be lifted.
Yes, and obviously we've seen cases like that in the last 12 months. And what we identified that the most important part is to create clear communication and expectation management, right? And for example, the ability of the data here, not to show us just what is the average time to get a visa from the US to Germany, but how long it took for people who applied like me in the last 6 weeks, right? And I can immediately see that there is an issue. So I'm not the only one who is facing that challenge. And when that issue is starting to be resolved, I can see from the data the progress. And when I say it's both the employee and the mobility manager. So again, if we're using data wisely or to the full extent, we can help manage the expectation and create better visibility on what is coming next, even in cases which are the unexpected cases, right? I was planning to relocate and now.
That's absolutely brilliant. So what you're saying, it's a bit like, I suppose, what's going on at the moment around the world is people are trying to get the vaccine, and they're all sort of informally speaking to their friends and family and say, well, where did you go? Where did you go? And they find out, all their questions. They're sort of crowdsourcing their questions and finding out where to go, when to go, etc. What you're saying, in a way, is there's something similar going on here. This is what Yuki is referring to, almost in a microcosm, that says there's people stuck in their home location, ready to go, and they need to know exactly when and how they can get out of their host location. And apart from looking on official sites, one way of looking at it is to see what actually your colleagues have been doing, and maybe they can all learn from each other in terms of what is the most efficient and effective way of getting out to their host location. And that's a real example of how mobility can be much more strategic. It can actually be very proactive and help people with the very real problem they're facing at the moment, which they didn't face a couple of years ago, which is how do you actually get to a country where maybe there's no flights at the moment or there's entry restrictions to get there. I hadn't thought about that as a concept until Yuki just raised it, but I think that is hugely important, how we can use technology and the crowdsourced information to help there. So Tom, I'm going to move on the conversation a little bit because I think there's another issue which we haven't really talked about to date, and I think it's important to talk about it. We were talking about it earlier when we were green rooming this, and that is, we're going to see mergers and acquisitions. We're going through times, pandemics. The one thing we know about the pandemic is it's creating change, and probably change at a faster pace than we've seen for many, many years, probably the fastest period of change in our lifetimes. And with change, you're going to get some companies that fall by the wayside, some companies that run for cover, and some companies who use it as a chance to be acquisitive. So let's just talk a little bit about that. And Eric, you've had a lot of experience with that. How can we use technology and how can mobility help when we're getting into mergers and acquisitions and indeed divestitures? I think you're on mute now, Eric.
Sorry about that. I had a garbage truck passing right outside the office here, and I thought maybe I would put it on my mute temporarily.
Thank you for doing that. Very, very appreciative. But you're off.
Yeah. I think in the area of mergers and acquisitions, that's an example where you need to get as much information as you can. You need to get data as quickly as you can to begin to strategize with the rest of the M&A team, because the global mobility person typically will be a member of the M&A transition team. And if you're in an acquisition, for example, you're going to be asking the mobility person over at the company that you're acquiring, who is in process where. Give us a total update of your mobility population from your temporary assignments, long-term, short-term, your who's in transit, permanent residents, how long have they been there? We need to know everybody that's on a visa. We need to know everybody that's in some process of tax return for this year, last year. Where are they? So in order to be able to even begin to plan with the group what the steps are, you need to know who you're dealing with. So, and then flip it. If you're the team that's getting acquired, this is what they're going to be asking you. You're going to be asked to stop doing your day job, even though you're still relocating people. But you need to provide all this information all of a sudden. You're going to be expected to stop. You're going to be expected to do your day job and provide all of a sudden all these reports accurately as to what's going on. And so how are you going to provide that report? Well, the better your technology, the easier and the better you're going to be able to. In the past, you've had to go out to all your vendors and ask them for these reports. You get these reports back in one stage or another. And again, sometimes the reports conflict with each other, so then you're reconciling. A lot of times you're put on hold because, for example, your relocation company has to go out and contact all of its sub-vendors in order to give you a report as to, where everything is. So that, in one sense, is where it is.
I suppose you also have to merge your vendors, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Two sets of vendors, which may or may not be the same organizations.
Yeah. Now you've got separate vendors providing services. You've got to determine, are you going to stay on? Are you going to assimilate these into the acquirer's policies? Are you going to run, parallel policies? How are you going to make that determination without looking at the data? How are you going to know what to do with the tax returns, for example? Are you going to bring everybody into the new vendor, or who can be changed and who needs to keep going? So those are the logistical issues.
Yeah, and then on a similar note, Eric, oftentimes companies, you talk about assimilation, they may acquire the new company, and it may take months sometimes to fully integrate them into the acquired company's systems, into the new parent company's systems. And so it could require an offline sort of payroll management process, tracking all the immigration functions in terms of how long their temporary visas last and when they run out, and managing a separate group of vendors. And so you may have to have a separate mobility technology platform set up for that acquired company or acquired companies before they get fully assimilated and transition into the new company. So companies are looking at a sort of an offline separate mobility technology solution in the interim in some cases to manage that function rather than having to just do it all manually.
Right. Frequently, you'll be working off of a transition service agreement, where even though the new company owns this stuff, as the old company, you're still managing it, but separate from your own team.
And one of the things that we in mobility, I think, are good at, or should be good at, is the whole concept of onboarding. We are used to moving people to a new location. And that's not a long hop to say that during an acquisition, one of the things you have to do is to onboard the new employees, especially if you're a large employer making a series of small acquisitions. Maybe you're buying up a tech company, buying up smaller tech companies or something like that. And you're having to onboard teams. And I think, and maybe Nitzan, you can talk to this, you can use technology. I know we have, you can use the technology to actually provide what is effectively a welcome platform, an onboarding platform for the new people.
Yeah, the M&A area is I think especially interesting, and one of the companies we work with, a very large company that is very active in acquisitions, and the majority of their acquisitions are for the talent, right? So not necessarily so for some assets, but actually for the people. So it's critical for them to get the acquisition right, because if they lose the people, what was the value of that acquisition? So one of the things they decided to do is to help better streamline that transition from working with not even a mobility team, because some of those companies might be 20 or 50 people, don't even have a mobility team, but an HR person everyone knows and everyone just know to go and talk to when they have an issue. Suddenly they are part of this big system, and they just kind of felt lost. And to close that gap, they created a welcome experience, which is a platform that takes the employee from the move that just happened in terms of, you might be still sitting at the same table, but now you are part of a new organization. And how do they need to, what does that mean for their visa? What does that mean for the immigration step? Who are their now contact details? What should they expect will be the next steps? When they should expect to get engaged? What are the new processes they need to be familiar and deliver it? All that in a way that allows the employees to be engaged. Because the fact that they engage with that content also generate the data that allows to analyze and identify those that are more engaged, that are less engaged, or that might need a bit more of hand-holding. So again, it's bringing the technology to do the repetitive work, to do the experience, the self-space, and then using the data in order to identify where a bit of more hand-holding is needed and where more of a personal touch could really make the difference.
Yeah, we're with the M&A, like one of the examples where we got the data as quickly as you could get accurate immigration data. That's where you would have a strategic opportunity to talk to the planning group, because you'd be able to see which individuals perhaps were on L1s, which individuals were actually going to lose their right to remain in the U.S. Because of this acquisition. And so you'd be able to actually, if there were going to be some redundancies, and as there always are, you could look at, okay, who are the planned redundancies, and what kind of visas are they on, and what does that mean to them and their families? And by doing that, you're able to actually help them plan what the date of the redundancy would be in conjunction with the visa requirements to maybe give the employee who's being terminated and their family a break, so that they've got time to plan their next step. They've got time to remain in the U.S. and not have to just immediately leave. And the quicker you get that data, and you're able to have that kind of strategy discussion, then you can implement the right dates, as opposed to just have somebody set a date and now you're locked in.
So this is a great area where we can be strategic. And indeed, it may well be that what we need is an M&A strategy for mobility before there's an M&A deal on the horizon. So it doesn't just turn up last minute and you get a call saying, oh, we've made this acquisition, and you don't know what to do. Plan it, in the quiet time, if there ever is a quiet time, so that when it goes mad with the deal, you're ready. I want to come on to one probably last subject that we'll cover off today, and that's new mobility populations, because I think, you know, what we're going to see, what we've started seeing are all sorts of new types of populations through the pandemic. And I think, Eric, I think you were saying when we were chatting earlier that you think the future is going to be a small number of VIPs who get a full service and pretty much everybody else being lump sum.
I kind of see it going that way, and the folks that I'm talking to seem to be recognizing that experientially. I've spoken to 3 individuals in the last 2 weeks, and all 3 of them made the comment that they were surprised at the precipitous growth in the lump sums, that they weren't even really aware of it within their own program until they had their most recent data dump. In the past, you know, the programs, it seems to me, in my experience, you know, we used to have, you know, the top tier, you know, maybe the 10, 15% of the VIPs, the C levels, they were at the top. And then you have the group split into like 2 groups. There'd be like maybe your senior managers to senior directors, and maybe your managers and the rank and file. And maybe, you know, there'd be the top tier that got the white glove treatment, and then the middle tier that got a core flex, you know, with designated benefits with certain perhaps costs, you know, that needed to be approved. And then maybe at the lower level, you know, like with our group, you had maybe a modified core flex, or that's where your lump sum would come in. Well, what I'm seeing I think there's going to be a simplification take place in a lot of the companies, right? You're always going to have that top white glove experience for your top leaders. I don't ever see that going away, and I'm going to see, and that continues to be, you know, very strategic. But I see sort of the elimination of that middle group. I see the lump sum moving up from that lower group to the middle group as well. So I see a white glove and I see a lump sum movement. I don't think the core flex will ever completely go away, but, you know, if I was to predict, you know, and of course, you know, predicting is, you know, doomed for failure, but there just seems to be this increase. And I think the pandemic has sort of given folks the idea that, you know what, we can adapt and do this ourselves, and we can maybe, you know, run our programs with less. So anyways, that's just a thought. I'm certainly not wedded to it, but that's my thought, and that's kind of what I'm seeing in the talks I'm having with folks.
It's fascinating. I mean, this is quite controversial. I mean, we've talked about lump sum.
I live there.
Absolutely. We've talked about lump sum on the shows in the past, and a lot of people, you know, we as an organization are lump sum neutral. I mean, the Benivo platform works whether it's a lump sum program or a traditional program. But a lot of people out there in the industry hate lump sum. They feel that lump sum does not work. It leads to bad decisions. It leads to people making all sorts of mistakes. But I think what we're hearing, what we're seeing is that irrespective, in a way, whether people in the industry like lump sum, it is growing. And maybe one of the issues we need to deal with is how to make sure lump sum works effectively so that it meets the business strategy. Because the strategy is saying lump sum's the way we're going, then probably, you know, to put it bluntly, we probably need to fall into line with that and find a way of delivering a safe experience and a good employee experience for lump sum.
Well, and again, I think the technology, the idea was lump sum was bad in the past because all these guys had to go out and do everything, and it was difficult to do, and it was time consuming, and it was wasting productivity, and that was the type of answer. But the better the technology, the easier it is to do that, and the more the workforce itself is geared to doing these things, going online. You know, like I say, my generation, the boomer generation, we didn't want to go online and do this stuff. We wanted to be able to go to someone and have them do it for us. Well, we're way in the past. The guys now, these people, you know, they live on the computer. Their mindset is, give me my money. I can do everything better than you can do.
Absolutely. And Patricia Tavares made the point about in some regions, in fact, I'd say probably you could argue everywhere, that, you know, there's a big issue around duty of care. But, you know, but again, a good technology platform will hopefully, dare I say it, like ours, will deal with the duty of care aspects and will also, you know, give people the warnings that they have to ensure they don't go down. I mean, I appreciate it is a controversial and difficult area, but I think nonetheless we are seeing this massive growth in lump sum, and we need to find ways of adapting to that, because that seems to be one of the mega trends that's coming out of the pandemic. It's been a fascinating conversation. I can't believe that our hour is over already. Let me bring Julia back on stage. I don't think we have Matt with us. I know Matt's been busy because he's busy trying to organize his move in 4 days' time. So he did say he wouldn't be here at the end. But Julia, thank you so much for your update. Obviously a hugely important subject, and I know you're going to be back with us next week as we talk to the view from the top of the women of global mobility with Rena Montalvo, Deb Convery, Galia Peretz, and Becky Wood. So fascinating show next week. Thank you to our guests, our Benevo Strategy Council members, Eric Halverson and Wes Okumura. Thanks to our very own relocatee, Matt Cheek, and of course many thanks to our CEO Nitsen Udan, and especially many thanks to everybody in the audience. It's been great having you all there, and we really appreciate that. So thank you everybody, and we'll see you all again next week. Take care everybody.
Bye.